Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am revamping my Swatch My Collection series. I intend on this being a swatch through and destash as I go along type thing. So we are starting strong with a brand that I plan on destashing nothing from. So here we are with Polished for Days. I will link their site in the description box. I can almost guarantee that none of these polishes will be available. But it is a wonderful brand if you are interested in checking them out. That will be down there, as well as my Instagram page and the polishes in the order that they are seen. So I do only have 14 Polish for Days polishes in my collection. I do intend, again, on keeping every single one of them, but not every video is going to be like this. There are some brands that I have hundreds of polishes from, so I will have to cut back on some of those, but these are tried and trues. They are near and dear to my heart, so it's going to be a little bit different with this video, and it just so happens to be the first one of the series. So without further ado, we have 14 polishes, and let's jump on in. So first we have Polished for Days CYMO. This is kind of a peachy pink crelly, and then it has iridescent flakes. There are also holographic flakes in here as well. Those do take precedence over the iridescent flakes. They are in abundance. I'm going to try to look up information for all of these polishes, but it's not always super easy to find. But what I did find on this one is that it released in 2020, and I believe it is April of 2020, it said. The formula on this is good. It's a little bit sheer here on this first coat, but I do think it'll build up nicely in two. It is looking more pink on my nails than peach, which I'm not mad at. So this first coat did dry down almost entirely matte. I will need a glossy top coat for this. And I don't know if I'm going to destash along my way of swatching through everything, or if I'm going to just kind of take stock of what I have. But I do think this is a pretty color. I don't know that it's necessarily my favorite Polish for Days that I've ever seen, but it is very pretty. I do think if I were to wear this, I would probably opt to go in for a third coat though, but there are two coats of CYMO. So up next here we have Zeus and Hera, and this is more of a Barbie pink, and then it has a ton of these iridescent but shifty flakes in there. And these ones are a lot smaller, and it does seem to be a lot more in this bottle than there was in the last bottle. This does have a really good formula. It's not too thick or too thin, and it is nicely opaque as far as being able to build up this base color goes, while seeing all of these flakes still. This is one that I am pretty familiar with. I've used this one a couple of times. This is from the February 2021 For the Love of Polish box. So not as old as some of my Polished for Days polishes, but it did still need a good shaking because it has been a while since I've used it, but that is our first coat. So here's our second coat of Zeus and Hera, and that does cover completely in two. Also, I'm doing these videos in a different style where I am just talking through and giving first impressions of polishes instead of doing a voiceover. So bear that in mind when I also say I have 3 kids, so you might hear some babies in the background periodically. This does also dry down to a pretty dull finish, so you are going to want some top coat, and I will say that a matte top coat makes these flakes absolutely glow. They are so beautiful with a matte top coat. But there are 2 coats of Zeus and Hera. So up next we have Serendipity, and this one is kind of a rose gold base, and this also has silver, I want to say platinum flakes, but they might be holographic, and this also has shifty iridescent flakes as well. So the whole point in me wanting to swatch through my collection is to destash some stuff. I am absolutely swimming in nail polish at this point, but I know for a fact that I treasure my small Polished for Days collection. So I don't really know why I started here, but I wanted to kind of experiment with this and tackle a brand that I don't have a ton of. I only have 14 Polish for Days polishes in my collection, and I know I'm keeping all of them, except maybe Zeus and Hera, because that's my sister's dog's name, and I think that she would get a kick out of me just sending that home with her one day. But that is our first coat of Serendipity. So here's our second coat of Serendipity. This is a polish that I've never used before, so I wasn't really sure how it would perform. I'm personally happy with this in 2 coats. If I look super closely, I could potentially need a 3rd coat, but I think it's one of those things that nobody should be that close to your nails to be able to see that there's any visible nail line left. I don't even think I can see it on camera here. This does, again, dry on the pretty dull side of the spectrum, so I would use a top coat with this. And I don't necessarily think that this is one that would benefit from a matte top coat, but there are 2 coats. So up next we have Unicorn, and this one is more of an orchid base color. And again, it's got these shifty iridescent flakes and holographic flakes. I do apologize that my bottles are not in focus. I either have my bottles in focus or my fingers in focus, and I do believe that the fingers probably take priority on that aspect, so you can see the polish on my nails in focus. And if I use the autofocus feature of my camera, it is very, very loud, which is why I have a tendency to lean towards voiceovers. Because when I first started swatching, it was mostly in autofocus, even though I don't really use that feature anymore. This is a little bit sheer here on this first coat. I do think it'll be buildable in about 3 coats, but the shimmer that's in here is absolutely beautiful. So here's our second coat of Unicorn, and as I expected, it doesn't look like it's going to build up completely in 2 coats. It is reading decently opaque here on camera in 2 coats, but in person I can definitely still make out a pretty good deal of my nail line. But for the sake of getting through 14 of these polishes, I do think I'm going to stop here at 2 coats. I do still recommend going in for a top coat with this. It is going to dry pretty dull. If you use that matte top coat, those iridescent flakes are going to stand out nicely. And then if you use a glossy top coat, the holographic flakes are going to stand out more than the iridescent ones are. So it just depends on what you're going for with this look. But there are 2 coats of Unicorn. So up next we have Daffodil. This released in March of 2021. It's a kind of pastel yellow crelly, and then it's loaded with metallic blue flakes. I am no stranger to this one. I have worn this one on quite a few occasions, and I think it's absolute perfection. I do love a pastel yellow polish, and this one is excellent. I always get opacity in 2 coats. The flakes that are in here come out in an actual abundance, and they spread out so nicely across the nail. You don't have to do any kind of manipulation. They all just kind of work together in harmony with this base color. So there is our first coat of Daffodil. Here's our second coat of Daffodil, and this one does cover completely in 2 coats. I don't even think that if you have like a super long nail or a super strong visible nail line, you would need 3 of this. This, I think, is like the most perfectly formulated yellow crelly to exist. My brush on this one, the tip of it is cut a little wonky, so I do have to be a little bit extra careful on application, but that is no bother to me per se. I don't mind doing cleanup, and I don't mind taking my time usually. This is also going to dry dull. A matte top coat will help those flakes stand out so beautifully, and a glossy top coat will obviously give it that nice plump finish, but there are 2 coats of Daffodil. Up next we have Arista, and this one is a turquoise base. It has a linear holographic effect to it and a tiny itty bitty like golden microflake. It's almost like a large particle shimmer that's in here, but you can read them individually, so I would dare say that they're a microflake. And then there are also larger flakes in here as well. The color to me is indistinguishable, but I kind of want to say that they're shifty, just not iridescent, so more like an ultrachrome chameleon flake. This one released in October of 2017, and it is still holding so strongly. This is super opaque here on this first coat, obviously not quite a one coater, but very easily buildable in 2 coats while still being able to see all of the additional elements. So there's our first coat. So here's our second coat of Arista, and this is going to bring us to full coverage. I do really like the flakes that are in here. I feel like it gives it that actual turquoise stone look, and I think it's really, really beautiful. I don't swatch with a base coat, and I haven't experienced any staining on these. However, with the yellows and the greens like this especially, you might end up with some staining. There is a warning on my labels on some of them that say to wear a base coat, so bear that in mind and protect your natural nails. But there are 2 coats of Arista. Up next we have Deephaven, and this one is an inky blue base. It does have an aurora shimmer to it and a blue shimmer. And then I also want to say that the flakes that are in here are like a platinum flake. It's hard to tell in my indoor lighting if they are platinum or if they are holographic. I did have somebody say if I'm not reviewing the polishes, I don't have to be specific on the elements that are inside of it. Sometimes a simpler description is better, but that is just my controlling nature in that I feel like I personally have to know what's actually specifically in there. This polish, it looks like released in June of 2016, and considering it is that old, it is very, very well done. I do think there are also some larger ultrachrome chameleon flakes in here, but that is our first coat of Deephaven. So here's our second coat of Deephaven, and the base on this is a little bit more jelly than creamy crelly. So I can still make out my nail line. I'm really not sure if I were to wear this one out, if I would add that third coat. I think I probably would. So I am going to do the third coat on this today, just so it looks, okay in my photos. The shifty quality to this polish doesn't really read on the nail as not at all, but it is very strong there in the bottle. So that's a little bit misleading and a little bit disappointing, but a very beautiful base color in general. So I think I would still be happy wearing it if I weren't expecting the shiftiness. And here's our third coat of Deephaven. That does bring us right there to full coverage and the happy spot for this polish. It's crazy to me to think that this polish is older than my son Cooper, that I've been into nail polishes for that long. Just absolutely blows my mind. Again, this one is very beautiful. The blue shimmer that's in here stands out so nicely against this base color. And the flakes do get a little bit lost because it's so deep, but at certain angles you can really see them beautifully. But there are 3 coats of Deephaven. Up next we have Milky Way, and this one is a kind of vampy blurple base. It is more blue than purple, but with this red shimmer that's in here, it absolutely reads as a purple when it's fully built up, but you will be able to see on this first coat that it's actually like an inky blue base, but the coverage is very, very nice here. There are also, I don't know if it's just like a really large particled red shimmer or if it's a very itty bitty red flake, but some of them are pretty distinguishable. So I would venture to say that they are both present in this polish. This one released in July of 2017, so I don't think this is something that is going to be super easy to get a hold of anymore. But I will say I don't love purple nail polishes, and I think this is stunning. So there is our first coat. So here's our second coat of Milky Way, and I do think that's going to bring us up to full coverage for this one. I did want to ask, where do you guys think I should destash when I'm destashing polishes and going through them? I have tried on Instagram, and that does okay to list them individually, but Instagram only allows so many posts a day, so it would take me absolutely years to get through things, posting them individually that way. So I don't think that's the best option. I did have some pretty good engagement listing as a actual list of polishes to destash, but then people were asking for like, polishes, and then other people wanted the same ones. So it was really hard for me personally to keep track of what was not already claimed and what was already claimed. And I didn't like that idea either. I considered making a page on my site for destashing polishes and wasn't sure if that would be weird to list other makers on my site. So I'm at a complete loss on how to go about destashing thousands of polishes, because I swear I have a box of at least 2,000 polishes that I'm actively trying to destash looking at me right now, while also I still have to go through my entire collection and see what I want to keep. So whenever that process starts, I'm just curious if you guys have any insight on destashing. But anyway, there are 2 coats of Milky Way, and she's staying with me forever. Up next here we have Flambe, and this one is a multi-chrome. It's kind of one of those oil slick multi-chromes. Goes from pink to green to blue to purple. It also has an Aurora shimmer to it. It's a linear holographic. There's a lot happening in this polish. Again, it almost reads on this first coat like an inky blue base. The coverage is phenomenal though. This originally released in the June 2018 For the Love of Polish box. That car outside is incredibly loud. June 2018 For the Love of Polish box. So again, this isn't going to be one that's like actively available. It might be a little bit harder to seek out if you're interested in it. But again, this is absolutely stunning. So there is our first coat. Here is our second coat of Flambe, and that does cover completely in 2 coats. Also, let me know what you guys think about just doing it, doing the swatching on my tabletop here as the white background instead of a black background, which I generally do. I feel like the black background usually brings out the like color a little bit better, which is why I've always opted to use it. But for the sake of trying new things and switching it up a little bit, I wanted to go white, but I'm not sure how it's going to read in videos just yet. I might end up switching it back to black, but let me know what you guys think. So there are 2 coats of Flambe. Up next we have Dusk to Dawn, and this one is more of a mauve colored base. And then it has shifty iridescent flakes. These are of the larger variety. And I think this is kind of more so Polish for Days, like style polishes as of the current times. At least this is what I associate with Polish for Days. This one is sheer on the first coat. It is going to be nice and buildable though. So these flakes are going to give you more coverage than the base color does. Don't let that scare you. It is going to be fully opaque in 3 coats. The formula on this is also really good, and this is another one that I think is going to be a little bit harder to track down if it's something you're interested in, but there's our first coat. Here's our second coat of Dusk to Dawn, and the coverage is building up here in 2 coats, but I do think I'm going to still go in for a third coat just to cover my bases and make it look nice and pretty for photos. These flakes that are in here sometimes want to hang off the end of your nail. I just do the little tap tap. That gets it all back to where it needs to be, and I don't have to do any kind of extra manipulation to like kind of spread them back onto my nail. These flakes do come out in abundance and they are very easy to manipulate. So there are 2 coats. And here's our third coat of Dusk Till Dawn. That does bring us to full coverage. I do think that this is one that would look absolutely killer with a matte top coat. Of course, a glossy top coat is going to be beautiful as well, but I think these flakes are going to just glow with a matte top coat. A lot of these, oddly enough, I haven't either ever used or used in a really, really long time, like since I've purchased them. So it is hard to remember formulas and like what they look like fully built up, but I do really like this kind of chaotic look that these larger flakes create when they're more so in like clusters. I think this looks absolutely beautiful, and I say that very lovingly, knowing that this is also an extremely easy polish to use. The clusters could have a negative connotation to it, but I don't mean that in any kind of negative way at all. But there are 3 coats of Dusk to Dawn. Up next we have Dragon Breath, and this one is another kind of multi-chrome base. This is a more warm-toned purple multi-chrome base, so it does have like the oil slick effect at like extreme angles, but head on it's got this very nice reddish purple tone to it, and then it also is chock full of these holographic flakes. This originally came out in April of 2018 in the For the Love of Polish box for that month. And again, this is just absolutely stellar. I know I don't reach for my Polish for Days polishes all that often, but the ones that I do have, I just have this like attachment to them, and I think this is, again, gorgeous. I don't often wear purples, but this red tone purple, I need to pull this one out. So here is our second coat, and this does cover completely in 2. The formula on this is also just incredible. These polishes, I hadn't realized, it's 2024, just how long I have had my Polish for Days polishes. And they all perform so magnificently. It really goes to show that like if you store your nail polishes properly, they will last you forever. This one is going on, 6 years old now, and that's just wild to me. Anyway, you are going to want top coat to finish this off. It is going to dry dull, but absolutely beautiful. So there are 2 coats of Dragon Breath. Up next, we have When I Grow Up, and this one is a kind of almost dustier, deep gray, blue, purple base, and then it's just absolutely jam-packed with different colors of iridescent flakes. There's just an assortment of a rainbow mess of flakes in here. Way too many different colors to pick things out individually. This is in a jelly base though, so it is pretty sheer here on this first coat. This originally came out in August 2018's Polish Pickup. So once again, it is going to be relatively difficult to find if it's something that you're interested in tracking down. But there is our first coat. Here's our second coat of When I Grow Up. I do think that the formula on this one is a little bit thinner than what I have worked with so far in my Polish for Days collection, because it does kind of want to run down the side of my nails if I do too thick of a coat. So I'm trying to be mindful and do a little bit thinner, but it is still kind of wanting to run into my cuticles just a little bit. I am going to go ahead and do a third coat of this one. It's just a touch sheer on too. I don't know if that's picking up on camera, so I am going to do 3, but I also think this is another one that's going to look absolutely stellar matte. So here's our third coat, and that does cover completely in 3 coats. These flakes that are in here are so big and they're so loud, and I think they're so beautiful against this darker base color. They just stand out so well. I was also thinking, I understand it is 9:30 in the morning right now, and it's not a viable option at this moment, but I do think this would be fun to do because I am feeling a little bit chatty as I'm doing this. It would be nice to do like a glass of wine and 10 polishes and see what I can get rid of and what I want to keep, and just remind me of the polishes that I love in my collection. But there are 3 coats of When I Grow Up. Up next, we have Dasher. This is one that I am very familiar with. It came out in December 2017. This is a blackened jelly base, a pretty opaque jelly base though, but a blackened jelly base nonetheless. And it does have an Aurora shimmer that goes from a red to a green. This red almost reads like pink on the nails though. So I really like this. I understand how it's supposed to be Christmassy, but I really like the shifty Aurora shimmer that's in here. I don't think I've said it yet, but this also is loaded down with holographic flakes. The formula is phenomenal. I've gotten many wears out of this bottle of nail polish, and it's so gorgeous. So there's our first coat. Here is our second coat of Dasher, and this covers completely in 2 coats. It does dry on the dull side, so I do recommend going in for a top coat. It'll really help that shimmer and those flakes stand out. Also, this one is very shifty on the nail. I know there was one earlier that was the shifty shimmer as well, and it wasn't super shifty on the nail. This one is a mega shifter. On camera, that's obviously not going to show. I do have just one lighting setup at this moment, and I'm not changing it around too much because that would definitely be a hindrance in the entire filming setup that I have right now, but there are 2 coats of Dasher. And lastly for today, we have Suit and Tie. This one is a more obvious black base, but this one also has an Aurora shimmer. Man, I'm losing my words right now. An Aurora shimmer and holographic flakes. I obviously have a type when it comes to buying Polish for Days polishes, but this one is pretty opaque here on this first coat. Definitely not fully opaque in 1, but it's going to get there in 2. This one originally came out in the November 2016 For the Love of Polish box. That is almost 8 years ago. You know, I started this series back up, thinking about it the other day, with the intention of destashing things, and I knew I wasn't going to destash my Polish for Days polishes. However, all it has told me is that I need to make a Polish for Days purchase, but there's our first coat. So here's our second coat, and like I thought, this did cover completely in 2. Very opaque on 1 though, so pretty predictable on this one. I honestly am thinking of like Coca-Cola when I see this. Excuse me. That black base with the shimmer, I think it was OPI, came out a long time ago with a Coca-Cola collection. And now that color combination sticks with me as a Coca-Cola representation, and this one says that to me. But there are 2 coats of Suit and Tie. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this style of video. Let me know what I should change, what I should do differently. I'm absolutely open to suggestions. I do want this to be something that I stick with, and what brand you want to see next. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you'd like to see more from me, and I will talk to you again next time. Bye.